The Dark Phoenix Saga, and specifically Uncanny X-Men 137, remain one of the most pivotal, important stories and issues in comic book history. It's so important, so impactful that it's still being retold and celebrated to this day, from things like the Dark Phoenix film, references on shows like Stranger Things, and so much more. This saga remains on the radar of popular culture. The way comics deal with certain issues, the way they tell certain stories remains super powerful, and death is one of those, like the death of Captain Marvel, the death of Gwen Stacy, the death of Superman, the death of Jean Grey. But why? Let's take a look at this together. Before we begin though, I want to thank you for watching JLS Comics and pressing play. Hit that subscribe button, you'll join this rapidly growing JLS Comics family. You'll be one of the first to know when we upload everything each week. Alright, X-Men 134, the very same issue that was referenced in Stranger Things, is the beginning of the Dark Phoenix Saga. That issue hit comic book and grocery store shelves in 1980 and was written by a creative team that has come to define what it means to write the X-Men. A team that remains the gold standard on comic books done properly. Writer Chris Claremont and artist John Byrne. But the full story actually starts 4 years prior to that, in Uncanny X-Men 101. Chris Claremont also wrote this issue, but his artist was Dave Cockrum until issue 107. John Byrne took over at issue 108. The Phoenix Saga ran from issue 101 to 108, and then was followed up a bit later with a second part called the Dark Phoenix Saga, and that story ran through issue 129 up to issue 138. 138 was more of an epilogue and a recapping. So here's how the story goes. Jean Grey was piloting a craft back to Earth with her fellow X-Men when they're hit with a massive solar flare. They're forced to travel through it, and the shuttle crashes into Jamaica Bay, and it quickly sank. The rest of her team, though, thought Jean was dead, killed with the destruction of the craft, but then she triumphantly exploded out of the ocean, smashing through the surface of the water like a phoenix from the flames, reborn. But then she quickly collapses back to the water unconscious. Cyclops pulled her to the shore. She's immediately transported to a hospital. Meanwhile, Eric the Red had tricked a former Herald of Galactus named Firelord to attack Professor X's school, where Professor X was with the Shi'ar Queen. Her name was Lalandra. And then, to everybody's surprise, the dormant Phoenix awoke. Jean Grey, as the Phoenix, defeated Firelord, who is a powerful cosmic being imbued with the power cosmic granted to him by Galactus himself. Eric the Red took the opportunity to capture Lalandra and portal away, but Phoenix is able to make her own portal, and the X-Men give chase. They find themselves in another galaxy at the heart of the Shi'ar Empire. The X-Men team up with the Starjammers to stop the evil Emperor from using something called the Macron Crystal to destroy the entire universe. See, the Macron Crystal holds within it a neutron galaxy, and the center of which is the nexus of all realities. Everything flows through that one point in space and time. After a fight with some space robots, they find themselves actually inside the crystal. There's a blast of energy, and it makes everyone hallucinate, think their worst fears, and the crystal begins to crack. So Phoenix used all of her strength to keep it together, thus saving the universe, and thus the Phoenix Saga drew to a close. If the crystal had broken, it would have created a black hole so massive it would have destroyed all of the Omniverse. Okay, so the Omniverse, let me explain that. It's everything. All universes, all fandoms, all realities, even our own. It's the 616, it's DC Comics, it's the Superflow, it's literally everything. It would have collapsed down to a singularity, and the Omniverse would be reborn with the explosion into a new neutron star. And this actually happened before with a previous Omniverse, and the Phoenix Force was born of the fire of the Big Bang, created from a big crunch that the ruins of a previous Omniverse. During this time between Omniverses, the Phoenix Force was able to hold on to the idea of life, and it was reborn too. It's this very cycle of destruction and rebirth that gives it its name, derived from Greek mythology and a bird with the same name. Phoenix. So, if life ceases to exist, the Phoenix Force dies too, as the Phoenix is the power of all life that ever was and ever will be. But it needs life to live, and for power. It's nearly immutable, it's immeasurable, it's primordial. It's described in this way in the books: the embodiment of the very passion of creation, the spark that gave life to the universe, the flame that will ultimately consume it. The Phoenix Force would choose a host when it felt the mind of a being as it transcended the physical realm, someone with immense psionic, psychic, mental power, somebody like Jean Grey. The first time the Phoenix Force was on Earth was actually with an ancient magician named Pharaon. And he's responsible for the bird form the energy takes, and as an aside, also responsible for the lighthouse tower that the X-Men team Excalibur uses for their headquarters. Completely different story, so we'll touch on that at a different time. It was when Jean crashed into Jamaica Bay that her mind called out for help, and the Phoenix Force came to her rescue. But our story's not done yet. The Phoenix Force is an immensely powerful energy, but is limited by the human host's capacity. During the story, Jean Grey's strong moral compass kept the Phoenix on the straight and and narrow, but after a psionic attack from a villain named Mastermind, her descent to darkness began. Mastermind exposed the Phoenix to the malignant nature of humanity, and it succumbed to those primal urges, thus becoming the Dark Phoenix. The Dark Phoenix hungered for more power, so it absorbed the full energy of the Debari star, the Debari system, which went supernova and destroyed an entire planet, an entire system. Billions of lives were lost. It was genocide on a cosmic scale. Professor X was able to use his own alpha level psychopathic abilities to bolster the Jean Grey portion of her mind, hiding in the human shell, and so she was able to reject that Phoenix Force, that Dark Phoenix. But the Phoenix realized it would never have full control. Jean's powerful mind wouldn't let it, and she feared becoming the Dark Phoenix again, so she used the Phoenix Force to destroy her own body. In other words, she committed suicide. Right in front of Cyclops, she died. Right in that dark side of the moon where Uatu lives. Uatu did take notice, and he said Jean could have lived to become a god, but it was more important to her that she died a human. But here's where it became tricky. Was it Jean Grey who killed an entire planet? Or was it the Phoenix Force? Who should be held responsible? Should she just be depowered? Or should they actually kill her for her crimes? What was enough? Where would that balance in the scales of justice be? And further, how could she be redeemed for such a horrific act? Could they ever bring her back and have everybody interact with her in a normal way after what she did? Marvel's editor-in-chief at the time, a guy named Jim Shooter, Big Jim, said she could only come back if the writer found a way to resolve this conundrum. He's also the guy who made Byrne and Claremont redo issue 137. They originally had her being imprisoned. He said that wasn't enough. Ideas were tossed between John Byrne, Chris Claremont, John Salicrup, Big Jim Shooter as well. So this idea that the Phoenix was something else and not Jean Grey actually came later. Initially, it was a mad Jean Grey who had just unlocked 100% of her potential, but to give her that redemption story, bring her back, and keep her as a hero, it needed to become something that possessed her body. Kurt Busiek revealed that the true Jean Grey was in a cocoon still at the bottom of Jamaica Bay. The Jean Grey that emerged from the salty ocean water was not her. It was the cosmic energy of the Phoenix manifesting itself in her likeness. I say this even though it was actually Bob Layton on X Factor in '85 who wrote the story. Byrne called Layton to say, hey, this new guy Kurt over here, he's got a great idea for Jean, and that's what Bob ran with. The Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas are epic stories. They're both cosmic in scale and yet incredibly personal. They deal with fantastic ideas and ideas that are very real. They're filled with action and also filled with emotion. It's these very connections, the way the creators build fully dimensional, evolving characters that we come to know, that we can relate to through storytelling, that it feels like a real loss when they're gone. It's also in the way that the other characters emote and react when they're gone in a very real way, feeling very real things that we can relate to through our own personal experiences. These stories are the epitome of great sequential storytelling, and ones that I truly recommend everybody who loves this medium to read. The X-Men issues I mentioned before for these two stories, as well as 84's Phoenix the Untold story that will give you the original ending before the bullpen sort of battle of the wits. There's also a What If issue 27 called What If Phoenix Had Not Died, and a few random issues here and there that provide extra perspective on the story, the Phoenix Force, how it came to be and evolved, and in some cases how the story was retconned over time. I recommend all of that. But that, my friends, is the story of Jean Grey and the Dark Phoenix. Have you read it? Did you see either of the X-Men films on the topic? So let's go ahead and continue that conversation in the comment section down below. Before you head out, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it. Join this rapidly growing JLS Comics family. We upload new comic book, superhero, movie content every week, as well as a regular weekly live show on Thursdays. But that's it. I'm Jesse. This is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.